Darth Vader is typically synonymous with terror and power. The strength of Vader is legendary, and nearly every foe that has entered battle with him hardly ever leaves alive. However, we all know that Vader also carries with him great weaknesses, not all of which are physical. Greetings again, Acolytes of the Force, and welcome back to our ever-expanding archives. Lord Vader's suit was one of the greatest impediments in his life. Not only did it inhibit his potential due to his midichlorian count being cut down, but it also put him in constant stress and pain. It was heavy, clunky, difficult to see or even hear out of. Distressing to wear would be an understatement, but we have all done entire holocrons dedicated to the suit of Lord Vader. Yet, according to Sidious himself, the suit is not Vader's real weakness. Lord Sidious had an intimate relationship with the dark side, and Sidious knew the ins and outs of how it operated and used one's emotions, developing techniques that Sith could use to channel their power into great potency. Sidious's methods of doing this are what made him so powerful at such an older and physically limited age, perhaps even more limited physically than Vader. According to Sidious, there are several things that Lord Vader is doing which keeps him restricted in his power, and none of them have to do with his suit. So today, my friends and acolytes, let's open up yet another holocron and discover the true weaknesses of Lord Vader. But first, we'd like to thank today's sponsor, Saber, and be sure to stick around to the end to see a bunch of custom new sabers, as well as custom engravings that you can get on your very own dark or light side saber. Now, acolytes, let us open the holocron. There are two main reasons why Vader's power is so limited in this state. While his suit limits him physically, we know that Vader has the capacity to heal himself. It just takes a tremendous amount of effort, and it was something that failed once, and he never attempted to heal himself again. The story goes, when Vader was in his Bactapod, and he focused solely on his rage, hatred, and humiliation towards Obi-Wan, the Jedi, his past, and what happened to Padme. It took several tries, but Vader began to grasp the concept of being able to heal his body through the dark side of the Force. While this typically isn't possible, there were people such as Darth Sion who discovered a sort of backdoor method, a method towards dark healing, and it was a power that many Sith sought after, but could not attain. The idea was to use the dark side to repair one's body superficially after taking an inordinate amount of damage. Though it was excruciatingly painful, Darth Sion did it so much that by the end of his life, his body was practically Frankensteinian. But anyway, Vader was on the cusp of achieving this as well. However, as soon as his lungs began to repair and he took his first clean breath without the need of a machine, his joy and elation at this broke his very concentration and destroyed the dark power he was summoning, thus causing his body to revert back to its damaged, crippled state. In a rage, he destroyed his laboratory and never attempted the feat again, fearing what another failure could do to his mental state. The point of the story proves that Vader technically has the power to heal himself, but does not, proving that his suit isn't the real problem when achieving the strongest abilities in the dark side. But the ending of that story also goes to show what Sidious said about Vader. He does not control his anger. This is something that may raise a few questions. Controlling one's anger sounds like a Jedi teaching, but ironically, according to Sidious, it's actually far more of a Jedi-like thing to do to just let one's anger fly off the handle without properly channeling it. That's the better term to use here, rather than control, according to Sidious. A true Sith does not use their anger with reckless abandon, destroying everything in sight whenever they feel the surge of fury well up within them. A true Sith Lord masters patience. In the now Legends novel Death Star, we find out through Vader's thoughts as he exits his meditation chamber that Sidious has been trying to teach him to hoard his anger. When he feels those moments of fury from his past, Vader lashes out and destroys things, therefore needlessly wasting his anger rather than saving it to spend elsewhere. In contrast, Sidious saves his anger, hoarding it up inside himself to spend on power elsewhere whenever he needs. This was a lesson that Vader took an extremely long time to learn, and Sidious debated if he ever learned it at all. This is another reason why Sidious was so irritated that his apprentice kept killing his underlings, especially useful useful officers. It was perpetuating Vader's weakness and continuing that cycle of spending his anger as soon as it came to him. But even all of this, Sidious did not say was Vader's greatest weakness. Sidious said that his greatest weakness was his memories. There are several times where Sidious expressed his great displeasure with Vader's depression over his past. Initially, one might think that Sidious would want to encourage this, but in fact, it is again the opposite. In the novel Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, we learn that for the first few months of his life in his suit, Vader was in a deep melancholy, and he moped around his Star Destroyer at the Imperial Palace without doing too much of anything else. This, of course, began to deeply annoy Sidious, and more recently, in the canon Vader comic run from 2020, we see Sidious criticize Vader's sorrow more severely. In the run, Vader begins exploring pieces of his past after discovering Luke is his son. When he returns after completing his missions, Sidious smugly asks Vader if he is satisfied, but then his smugness turns to pure rage, and he says that no, Vader couldn't possibly be satisfied because he gained no power nor understanding of pain from this little jaunt into the past. Rather, in Sidious's exact words, instead, you were wallowing in grief. And with this, something amazing is revealed. Grief does not fuel the dark side properly. This revelation is massive because it could change how we understand the dark side entirely by studying the exact emotions behind it. It is Vader's grief and his inability to destroy his former self that makes him weak, and although he may try to hide this from Sidious, it appears to be literally impossible. In canon, Sidious would even flip the famous Yoda quote on its head, saying, "Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to power," completely removing suffering from the equation. The Jedi view embracing the dark side as the ultimate turn of grief and suffering, while the Sith view it as an expression of power. Grief is the regret of Vader's past. Vader also includes self-hatred in that very mixture. For many Sith, regret is an obstacle, and this is why they encourage indulgence, not self-restraint unless it is in the right places. Grief and regret carry with it potential of putting a Sith on a path towards acceptance and forgiveness, a path to the light side of the Force. In the end, Sidious tells him to forget his past entirely, deal with it, and move on. Forget Kenobi, forget Padme, forget Anakin. So back to Vader's suit. How much of a punishment was it really? In the 2015 run, Sidious makes this comment to Vader: "I do not test, I teach." Was Vader's suit itself actually a lesson disguised as a punishment, to teach Vader that his power will always never come from his body and his youth, and therefore he cannot rely on the past? Vader then built his fortress on Mustafar, overlooking the beach where Anakin Skywalker was killed. But perhaps Vader misinterpreted this message and believed he needed to seek revenge on Kenobi, but that was not the true point. The point was to have Vader struggle to attain the power necessary to become a stronger Sith, figuring out the advanced techniques and emotions necessary to channel the dark side into true potency. It is because of these things that Sidious said Vader was truly weak, and at one point in Legends, Sidious lamented that if Vader could ever overcome these obstacles, then perhaps he could even become powerful enough to overthrow the Emperor, and maybe even achieve some of that potential of the Chosen One. Sidious stated that the Sith are not limited by their body, they all grow old and decrepit eventually, but that real Sith are weakened by their mind. The true weakness of Vader was never the fact that he was crippled on Mustafar. The reasons are that this moment defined him, and not the power in the dark side that he could have touched if he had simply learned, ironically as the Jedi taught him, to let go. And now, my friends, the July Wrathbearer collection from Ona Saber.